and welcome to Trinity Talk Live, water cooler conversation from a Christian perspective. I am Ken Coughlin, and today we are having part 2 of the series we begun last week on abortion. I would encourage you, if you haven't watched last week's episode yet, to go back and watch that one as well, because this one's going to feel a little bit like just a straight-up continuation. We're going to be launching right into it. I do, however, one quick reminder again. If you haven't checked it out yet, please go ahead on the Trinity Joppa channel and check out our new program that we just started a couple weeks ago, Trinity Talk Devotions. It is a 5-minute weekly devotional. You can find it right there on the homepage of the channel. It's just like if you're a devotional you might be reading at home in a book, but it's in video format. It goes up every Thursday morning at 7 a.m., so you can get that and take that in before you get started with the business of your day. All right, so check that out if you haven't yet, please. And also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I've mentioned before that we are trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers, preferably before February 20th, because of some new restrictions that new requirements YouTube's put out there that could cause us to lose some of the functionality of the channel. Nothing that you're going to see, but that's stuff that's going to make my life more miserable if we don't have that taken care of. So if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. Tell your friends about it. We'd really appreciate it. That's all I'm going to say for an intro today, because we're going to launch right into it. Let me go ahead and introduce our guests, and then we will talk about a little bit about what we're doing today and how it differs from what we did last week. Seated over here to my left is Carol Maglev. Carol came to Birthright to volunteer in 1988, and she has been the executive director of that program for more than 27 years. The model which she uses to lead the ministry is fashioned after her own crisis pregnancy 33 years ago and the unconditional love and help she received from a stranger. Carol has been married to John for 32 years. She has 5 children and 1 grandchild. Thank you very much for joining us, Carol.
Thank you, Ken.
And seated to my right is Teresa Hessler. Teresa Hessler works full-time as the Director of Administration and Legislation of Maryland Right to Life and serves as a voice for the unborn. She also serves on the steering committee for the Maryland March for Life, which holds their annual event every spring in hopes to show lawmakers in Annapolis that there is a strong pro-life presence in the state. She works as a volunteer with Project Rachel and Rachel's Vineyard, which is the Archdiocese of Baltimore's post-abortive healing ministry. Thank you for joining us, Teresa.
Thank you, Ken.
Let me ask you a quick question. I've noticed in your bio you said the Maryland March for Life is held annually every spring. Is there a date for that this year yet?
Yes, there is a date for that. That is March 10th. So it'll be on Monday, March 10th.
And does that have its own website? Or?
It does. It's MarylandMarchForLife.com, and it's from 4:30 to 9:30 p.m. in the evening.
Excellent. Well, what we'll do is we'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode. So if you're interested in that, you can just, on the YouTube page, you just scroll down the comment section and everything at the bottom. You're going to see the show notes there underneath the video, and we'll have a link to that website there in the show notes of this episode. All right, well, we're not doing a current events segment this week because, well, we did one last week about the March for Life, and like I said, this really is a two-parter, so this is kind of a continuation of where that episode left off. At the end of last week's episode, last week we talked about the issue of abortion from a ethical standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint, a scientific standpoint, and it worked out really well because the way the conversation led is it led, at the very end, everybody was talking about, but we always have to remember, we as Christians have to remember that there's a ministry aspect to this, there's a personal aspect to this, and we have to be able to show love and compassion to the people that are going through this.
Right.
And so that's the point of this week's episode, is how to go about doing that, because I know there's probably a lot of people out there that understand that that is our role as Christians, but might not understand, A, what they can do personally, or B, what resources are out there. And so that's why you two are here, to educate us and fill us in. And so what I want to do, first of all, is just give you each a chance to talk about what Birthright is, what Project Rachel is, in case people haven't heard of them. So why don't we start over here with Carol. What is Birthright?
Okay. Thank you. Birthright is a pregnancy help center. We help anyone that is pregnant or parenting with support, education, guidance, resources, referrals. We're just a different arm of the pro-life movement. Your guest last week talked about the fight for abortion and the right to life cause, which is really important. They're focusing on the issue. What we do at Birthright is we focus on the person behind the issue. Sometimes people have found that the issue can be kind of rough, talking about the pro-life and the pro-choice. People can get loud and they can get yelling and things like that. And so we have to take a step back and say, that's not what we're about. We're about loving this person, meeting the person in front of me, finding out what her situation is and how can I help her move forward. The pro-life movement is so important. What their work really is, it's very important, but our work at Birthright is equally important because we're kind of on the street. We're working with the men and women through this crisis decision and then supporting them after their baby is born or actually and throughout their pregnancy. The other thing about Birthright that's kind of special is most people assume that a crisis pregnancy center only deals with the mother, the woman that is pregnant, and that is important, and that's our number one person, but there are so many other people we support and we help as well. The father or the partner in that situation. We have a men's ministry now because we know if we can support him and lift him up to be strong for his child, that it's going to only help the baby and it's going to help the mother as well. We also support grandparents or a kinship program, anyone that is taking care of a baby, because the mother is not able to do that for one reason or another. So as you can see, there's a lot that we do. We not only help with making that decision about her pregnancy, supporting her, not judging her, but then walking with her throughout that pregnancy and then after the baby's born.
How far-reaching is Birthright? In other words, how many locations, what kind of region does it cover?
Well, Birthright International is actually the first crisis pregnancy center in existence back in 1968. Birthrights are located all over the world. There's 5 in Maryland. We are the only one in Harford County. Our Birthright Center does not have any borders, so we serve Harford County, Baltimore City, Cecil County, and Southern Pennsylvania. So anyone that needs help, if they want to call or come up to Bel Air, that we're happy to help them.
And you said call. Well, before I forget, what's the phone number? We'll put it on the screen.
410-838-0443, or you can visit us on our website at birthrightoфbelair.org.
Excellent, thank you. Now, Project Rachel, I can be honest, I didn't even know it existed. I knew Birthright existed, all right, before I emceed an event at the St. Patrick's Church last year sometime. Again, I've emceed so many, we've lost track. Was it in October? I don't know.
It was in the fall for sure.
It was in the fall at some point. That's where I first heard about Project Rachel. So I'm betting that I'm not the only one. What is Project Rachel?
Sure. So Project Rachel is the Archdiocese post-abortive healing services, anywhere from offering one-day spiritual retreats to full weekend retreats, one-on-one counselors, anyone dealing with the grief of abortion, whether it be the mother, the father, the grandparents, the siblings, future children. We work through different exercises to really provide that healing, since 1 in 4 women have experienced an abortion by 45 years old.
Wow. And how far, is Project Rachel, you say it's Archdiocese program?
For the state of Maryland, Project Rachel is based out of the Archdiocese of Baltimore, but there are Project Rachels throughout the United States and throughout the world.
Okay. Now, both of you obviously have mentioned, well, in this case, it's actually through the Archdiocese, so it's through the Catholic Church, correct?
Correct.
All right. Does that mean you only serve Catholic people?
Absolutely not. We do offer non-denominational Christian healing as well, so the exercises are really tailored to who's sitting there, who's in front of us, showing that love and compassion.
And what about on Birthright side? Does Birthright take all comers?
All comers, yes, absolutely. We are non-denominational, and we're happy to speak with anyone and work with them.
All right. I already knew the answers to those questions, but I figured I should ask them because
That's
other
right.
people might not.
Exactly.
All right, so what I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about what the need is. In other words, what are these women going through? What do you find they're going through that establishes the need for these ministries? And let's flip-flop it here, okay? So I
Okay.
started over here, we'll start over here this time. And also because I think, look, there's a what I would label as a misconception out there that abortion's an eraser. That, you know, the moment you have an abortion, all the problems go away, and there's no lasting effects, nothing like that. So let me field it to you. Is that true necessarily?
That's absolutely not true at all. Unfortunately, I far too often see the after effects that abortion has caused in someone's life, whether it be anxiety, depression, drug, alcohol abuse, the inability to keep a career, keep a job, extreme thoughts of suicide. It completely breaks a person. And it's not just mentally, but genetically, the way that our bodies change once we become pregnant, we're forever altered for that. And we're told in society that it's such an easy thing, that this is just a decision, you can make it, you never have to look back, there'll be no consequences. And that's not the case at all, because we're human and we do change and we do recognize consequence. And unfortunately for a lot of people, there's a 7-year average before they start to grieve the loss of that child. And you think about that time of that 7 years that the person is trapped in basically their own mental hell, not growing and really living the life that they're supposed to.
Why is that? Because, I mean, what is it that causes them to not be able to start the grieving process for 7 years?
Well, I think in society, one, abortion is seen as taboo, and you can't talk about it. You certainly don't want to tell anyone about it because we're afraid of judgment, and that's sadly a lot of why people have one in the first place. They're afraid of being judged, they're fearful, consequences through work. There's all these different perfect storms of emotion. So if you admit you're feeling something afterwards, you have to admit that you've had an abortion as well, and is very hard, I think, for us to do.
I think that is extremely important for us as Christians to keep in mind because, like you were saying earlier, sometimes when people are talking about the issue of abortion, it can get heated. That's part of why we did the episode last week, to try to help out to avoid that from happening, but it does happen. And I think that bleeds over into what you're saying, because people get so caught up in the emotions of talking about the issue of abortion that that emotional reaction is also how they react to someone who's had an abortion.
Right.
And that's exactly the opposite of what you need to do.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, we need to be approaching them with a loving approach, as opposed to just jumping out and I'm going to be judgmental of you right off the bat.
Right, and that's certainly something we do with Project Rachel. I mean, it's completely judgment-free, open arms, no matter what you've done, no matter what your background is, just showing love that people do care, even if they're complete strangers.
I imagine that plays over into Birthright as well.
It does, and we actually meet a lot of women that that are post-abortive, and the stories that they have told me is it's the very first person that they tell that they've had the abortion. They're most fearful for that. And you've got to remember that society tells them this is all going to go away and you're going to be fine. So if that's not the way they feel, they think that there's something wrong with them. And if people are not talking about their pain, then again, they think that they're the only one. So it's very hard for them to tell that first person. But once they tell that first person, if that person will respond in a way of love and no judgment, then it makes that next step to tell another person a little bit easier. That's probably the one thing that I really stress with my volunteers is you have to love them. You just have to love them and listen and don't judge them at that moment. Because if someone judges them, we're never going to get them to Project Rachel. And we actually do see a lot of women that come to Birthright. They trust us because we just are known in the community, and they'll tell us that. And if they know that we're not going to judge them, then we can tell them about Project Rachel, and I can make that referral to Teresa, and they can start that healing process.
So what are some of the issues then, some of them may be very similar, some may be different, that you see women facing when they're still pregnant, they found out they're pregnant, all right? What are some of the issues that they're facing that you at Birthright are there to help them deal with?
Well, the number one thing is just letting them know that they can do this if they want to do it. So one of the things in our charter was to make the community aware of pregnant women and take away that stereotype, because you got to remember Birthright started back in 1968. So there was a huge stereotype in society to be pregnant and unwed. And so that stigma isn't there anymore, but what we have found is that the stigma is still there within their family, that they need to hide this from their partner, or if he wants her to have an abortion, or hide it from her parents. She's scared. So often, many of our clients are thinking about having an abortion because they're afraid to tell their family, they're afraid to tell the people around them they're pregnant. We have seen thousands of women over the years, and every one of them has a different story, a unique story, but they all tend to fall into one of two categories. If a woman's thinking about having an abortion, it's because she's not receiving the support or she's not receiving the resources that she needs to have her baby. So that's what Birthright does. We step in and we're offered to be that support and to give her those resources, to walk alongside of her, to take her hand and say, you're not alone anymore. And then it's hard to say, we offer a lot of resources, but our very first thing is to listen to her, to focus on her and what is it that she needs right now. And then standing with her. And each step of the way, finding out what is the need and how can we find an answer to that need. And very often it's just allowing her to talk and kind of process what's going on in her head. They have lots of questions about abortion, so we talk with her about abortion. Birthright is a little bit unique because our whole focus is on the person that's sitting in front of us. That sometimes pro-life people tend to focus so much on the baby that they're not looking up at the woman's face. So, if Teresa was pregnant and I'm totally focusing on the baby that she's carrying, I'm not ever looking at her. And what we have found is that she is the only one that can take care of that baby at this time. And the most that we can do is take care of her, is to love her. We want her to feel validated, because if you focus only on the baby, in her mind she's thinking, they don't hear me, they don't care, they only want this baby to be born, which is a huge argument that the pro-choice community talks about. They only want that baby to be born, and then they don't care about what happens to her or the baby afterwards. And that's not true for Birthright. It's always about caring for her, the mother, because if we can love her and support her, she's going to take care of that baby and she's more likely to have that baby.
So what type of services, specific needs have you come across you've had to meet? Both, I guess, during the pregnancy, and you mentioned support afterwards. Have there ever been any things you've had to do or any services that you provide to help mothers once they've had their baby?
Absolutely. So we help them through the decision-making process, giving them all that information and non-judgment. We offer, we will make those referrals if they're looking to maybe make an adoption plan. We don't automatically hand them off to someone else. We continue to walk with them, but we bring in the professionals. If we find out one of our moms that are pregnant and she's had a previous abortion, we let her know about other services as well. So once she's made that decision about her pregnancy, that she's going to carry the baby, we walk with her throughout the pregnancy. We offer a pregnancy program, which is a one-on-one mentoring kind of like a DVD series. What we had found is that a lot of the doctors and the hospitals were saying that the women were not going to their prenatal classes and getting that education because it wasn't fitting into their time frame. So Birthright designed a program to be one-on-one. She with one other volunteer. They meet when it's convenient for the client, when she can get off work, when she can get transportation. However it works for her, we set it up. So she goes throughout her pregnancy learning about nutrition and what's happening in her body and how her baby's growing. Just a short DVD each time, but a lot of mentoring and supporting and loving her. So we do that throughout the pregnancy. The feedback from the clients have been that when she's given birth or goes into labor, she's not as afraid when she goes into the hospital. She knows what's happening when she goes. If she does not have someone to be with her in the hospital, Birthright is there for her. We will be her coach. We will be her mentor. We'll be whatever she needs us to be throughout the birthing. That's one of the great joys that we have to do, is to be there with her when she has her baby. And then after her baby's born, we don't stop there, because there's a whole nother area that she needs support on, because again, we can support her throughout her pregnancy, but a really, really crucial time is right after that baby's born. Getting to know her baby getting to know her, that communication, it's those first days, weeks, and months are so important. So we shift our focus onto her now as parenting. Again, supporting her. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating? Are people coming in to help you? How is the baby doing? Yes, it's normal for babies to cry. Yes, it's okay that you're not, that you're crying all the time too. Just loving her and supporting her for as long as she needs. Some of the material assistance that Birthright provides is maternity clothes and books throughout the pregnancy. She receives a layette basket when the baby is born with a huge laundry basket full of all the baby's needs. We offer baby clothes, diapers, formula, anything that she might need in those first days and weeks, we offer to her at free of cost. We have other ministries that give out furniture for free, so we help them as well.
So This may seem like a silly question with that large litany list you just gave, but I was reading an article, getting ready for the show this week, that said that there is a viewpoint out there that crisis pregnancy centers do nothing but provide free pregnancy tests and encourage women not to have an abortion. Is that true or false?
It would have to be false, because absolutely that is not the only thing that we do.
Right.
As I said, the most important thing is for me to stress with my volunteers is to take her hand, to love her, to walk with her, and not only her but him or anyone else that's in the situation to support her throughout her pregnancy. We have such a good relationship with our clients that years later they will post on social media, or they will stop in, or they will call us and let us know how we're doing, that we become friends and family to the people we serve, that we genuinely do love every person that we meet, and we want to help them. And it would be like me telling one of my kids, okay, you're good now, have a nice life. I mean, that's how close we are with our clients. There's so many different areas that we need to help them with. One of the things that we've had to take a step in faith on is the issue of addiction. Heroin addiction is so high in Harford County, and what happens is we're finding the rise of pregnancy and addiction. So the community, the community services and the hospital and the health department actually approached Birthright and said, would we partner with them to try to meet that need for pregnancy and addiction? That they're taking care of the medical end of the pregnancy, but can we help them, support them through their pregnancy, and help them to get that, take that step to get help for their addiction as well?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's one of the miscommunication, or what's the word I'm looking for? I'm tripping over my own tongue. Misunderstandings, I guess, that's out there, but even that doesn't quite seem to be strong enough of a word. That people, just like the one we talked about earlier with the people think that abortion's an eraser. Well, people think that crisis pregnancy centers, they're just completely unaware of all of the resources and all the benefit to them.
That's right.
Let me ask you a question, Teresa. So Carol mentioned something that actually made me think probably applies to you as well. She mentioned earlier that when people are so focused on the baby, they never see the mother. And I'm curious if that plays into the post-abortion ministry as well. In fact, that if people are so focused on the baby who was aborted, that they're not seeing the needs of the mother.
Right, and it's not just the mother, it's the father as well, because we found that it equally does affect both parents and people related, but when you can welcome them with open arms and really hear their story and know their background and let them know that everybody faces problems and trials throughout their life, and that God still loves them, and help them get that forgiveness, not just for themselves, the forgiveness of God, help them understand that, and the forgiveness of others. A lot of times people have blame involved in an abortion decision, whether it be strictly towards themselves, their family, their coworkers, their neighbors, really anyone, and working through those feelings and emotions and really focusing on them as a person.
Well, let me ask you just a fair play, because I asked her for contact information that I could put on the screen. Before we go any further, and I forget about this,
Sure.
If someone needs to get in touch with Project Rachel, how do they do that?
So they could either go to hopeafterabortion.org, and there's Project Rachel listed on that site, or if they want to search Project Rachel Baltimore within Google or Yahoo, it'll be under the Archdiocese website for Project Rachel.
Excellent. All right. So let me ask you then, specifically, what types of things does Project Rachel do? What kind of services, or I don't know if that's the right word for it, but you know what I mean. What does Project Rachel do to help these people when they come in the door?
Certainly. So anywhere from a phone call based on the person's comfortableness. It is a very scary thing and a hard step for a lot of people to even pick up that phone and admit that they need help with something. And so just listening, I think, is a good first step really in anything that we do. And then after kind of hearing their story and focusing on them, figuring out what might work best, whether it be a one-day spiritual retreat, which we do offer. I actually have one this Saturday that I'm running, but then we have weekend retreats. We do references to one-on-one counselors, so professional counselors, spiritual counselors, as well as clergy members. So anytime they kind of need a friend leading up to one of those things or even afterwards, because unfortunately, it's not just a one-time fix, and we've noticed a lot of people need to continue working through it, and it changes in different ways, and different feelings sometimes come up the second time you address your abortion decision, and just really holding their hand and guiding them through.
You both have mentioned men, and I think that may take some people by surprise that are watching the show. What is it that, how is it the men are affected by these issues, both, the during the pregnancy, and then if there's a post-abortion? How are men involved in all this?
Well, they were there from the very moment.
Okay. But I mean, how are they affected? Like, you talk about there are services that, that Birthright can provide to the partner or the father as well.
Yeah. Well, for me, at Birthright, we would be ministering and loving the woman, and here's this guy, he's either sitting in the living room or he's outside in his car, and nobody was really paying any attention to him, and I thought, you know what, we need to just go out there and say, hey, how you doing? Our focus, we don't do quite as in-depth with the men. It's really just, how are you? Tell me what you think about this, how do you feel about maybe having a baby right now? How do you feel about her thinking about having an abortion? The first time that we asked a gentleman that, she was in the other room talking about having an abortion, and he was out there, and he said, I can't tell her anything because, it's a woman's right to choose. It's her body, it's her choice. And, and I had to tell him, but don't you know that she needs to hear what you have to say? Don't you know that she wants to hear your heart? And in his heart, he said he didn't want her to do this. Well, ironically, we found out much later that she was in the other room saying, he's not telling me not to do this, so I know he wants me to have an abortion. So the communication wasn't there. So now the volunteers are in there saying, talk to him. Legally, he can't make her have an abortion or not have an abortion, but he is a part of this equation that what he thinks is important. The thing that surprised me with the men very, very early on was that when I started encouraging them about being a father, they were rising to that occasion. They want to take responsibility to that. And some of the feedback that they've told me are things like, nobody's listening to me. Nobody cares what I have to say. So we said, I care what you have to say. And, to have them walk through the pregnancy with her, to be, even if they're not in a relationship, but to just still care about her because she's always going to be a part of his life, and this baby is, again, it's going to make him stronger. And they want to be a father. And when these babies are born and these dads come in and show off their child, the look on their face is just magic, these guys. It just really is. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And again, if we can support him to be a strong father, it's going to support the mother, and it's going to support the baby.
Are the services that Project Rachel provides to fathers or men, are they substantially different in any way than what you provide to the women?
They're actually pretty similar, and it's based on the scenario. And I think, too, what Birthright does works so closely and is so important, what we're dealing with on the post-abortive healing side, is because those men need that uplift and that support, because what we see when they come through our doors on the other end is they feel regret and guilt from not protecting not just the woman, but then their child, and not speaking up, and not feeling like they knew they could take a part and at least have that communication and share how they were feeling regardless of the outcome. And so working through that with them is very important.
Well, let me ask you guys one last question, and I'll just field this to the table as a whole. You speak up however you want. And let's assume there's somebody out there watching right now who maybe they're not personally dealing with a crisis pregnancy, or they haven't personally gone through an abortion, but they have a close friend or family member who has, all right? And they can tell that person is hurting in some way, shape, or form, but they have no idea what to do. What do you tell them? What's the first step as far as how they can be a good friend, a good loving family member to that person and help that person with their needs?
I would say first to love her, to listen, to don't judge her where she is right now. She's beating herself up. She doesn't need somebody else doing that. putting out your hand and just saying, I love you, I care about you. Let's try to figure this out. I would encourage you to bring her to Birthright so that we can love her. To take that next step. If she's not willing to come, I would encourage you to call and talk with us, because we can give you some specific hints or resources that you might be able to share with her. Because it all starts with trust. Them coming to us, they're stepping out in faith. But if you can do that with them, take their hand and bring them to Birthright, she's much more likely to come.
And to what Carol said, I think really just offering that hand, I think it's a theme of kind of what we do on both sides, where it's a non-judgmental, safe space where you can share your story and know that you're not alone, and just find whatever you need, but as a friend or family member, to just be there for them and let them know that you can work through it together, regardless of the whole situation.
Well, thank you. Thank you both very much. Like I said, I thought that this was a side of the whole abortion issue that gets overlooked an awful lot. And so I kind of really wanted to have an episode that just focused on this, so people understand that there is love out there, there is support out there, there is hope for you and help for you out there.
Thanks for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Couldn't have done this episode without you.
There's a need for it, so thank you.
There's a need for it, and I hope, and everybody out there, obviously, if you did find any value in this episode, I certainly hope you did. Do us a favor. First of all, click a thumbs up. Click the like button here on the YouTube channel. That actually does help us get this distributed to more people. But the real way this gets distributed to more people is through you. We can't do it without all of you that are watching right now to share this video. Tell people about it. People aren't going to know about the resources that are available to them unless someone tells them, and that's the purpose of videos like this. So share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram, share it on Twitter, share it by email. If you know somebody going through something like this, you can send them an email with the link and follow up with them. Personal contact, personal love is the best way to do it. Next week, actually before I get to next week, Trinity Talk Live does have its own Facebook page at Trinity Talk Live Podcast. Give us a like on there too if you don't mind. We do give you some posts on there from time to time about what we have coming up. And speaking of what we have coming up, next week we are going to be talking about a topic that was requested by one of our viewers. As a matter of fact, I think for the next 3 weeks, we're actually covering topics that were requested by our viewers. You can request a topic on the YouTube channel. You can request it on the Facebook page as well. Next week is facing depression and anxiety. Something a lot of us both obviously kind of builds on what we've been talking about, I think, this week, but also is far more broad-reaching as well. Let me give one last thank you to Carol Maglev. One last thank you to Teresa Hessler. This was great. I thought it was very informative, and it's exactly what I was hoping we were going to get out of this episode.
Great.
So I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and thank you all very much for joining us. See you next week. God bless.
In your word we will follow.